I want to introduce you to Keegan. Keegan was one of Embark Lab's past students. Keegan went through the experience of App Inventor with us, where they took what we're doing here, and then they went to the next step. They went beyond Scratch, and they actually got to use MIT's App Inventor language and created their own apps, or started the process of creating their own apps. And I could sit here and tell you guys how great things are, but you're going to learn more from somebody your own age. So, Keegan, go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us how old you are, and what your background was in computer science before App Inventor, and then I'll just ask you some questions, and then they might have some questions for you too.
Okay, so my name is Keegan Pelton, and I'm 12 years old. And so before I came to the Embark Labs class for App Inventor 2 weeks ago, I did not do very much programming. I mean, I knew a little HTML and Scratch, but very basic. And so this course allowed me to go a lot farther. Not as much getting taught, but getting taught how to teach myself to go farther.
Describe the application that you and Tonge were developing?
So me and Tongi, and my partner who wasn't there on the last day, but we're developing a volleyball app for the Android operating system, where it would show you the stats and score and position of all the players and data from past games to show you when to make a substitute in the game at a certain time in the game. Like if person A is doing really good halfway through the game but does not do well in the last 2 minutes, then sub person B in for him because person B is better later.
So they were creating a live app that would help coaches make better decisions at substituting players, not just based on overall stats, but where you were in the game. And that was a really cool idea. And they're developing the algorithm to create that database in order to show how that could help. How was this different than your other experiences with Scratch?
So
what was different with the program you went through?
When we did the other, we spent, I don't know if you guys have done the same thing here, but we spent about a third or a fourth of our time on the computers in the whole class. But the other time we spent, usually in other classes what you do is you go in, you get taught on day one, Monday, that, okay, this is how you do this is how you do this, and then go make your app. You can ask me if you need help or ask your classmates. So with this class, it let us learn how different things happened and how to code better instead of just, okay, this block paired with this block does this. It let us figure out how we could teach ourselves to interact with the operating system so that we were a lot more productive when we actually did the coding.
How do you think that's going to help you in school next year, just the experience that you had this summer in just one short week?
So I think this, not just the activities we did, but knowing the possibilities of, we learned how to do, I don't know if you guys know, but the box method for quadratics, I've always done it, and it works, but no one knows how it works. And so we did an activity, really interactive, taught us about computer science, and taught us how the quadratic formula works. But those kinds of activities, we're trying to learn how things work and trying to imagine ways to make things work without just random activities like the box method that no one actually knows how they work.
We had the grid over here. We did the same position orientation, and we did the same robot game over here. And it was funny, when Keegan's group was working, we were all around, just like the CST, so just like you all were. And Keegan has had some experience with algebra, and all of a sudden, his face lit up, and he looked at me, and I said, "What?" He goes, "That's algebra." And I said, "Well, how is that algebra?" And he goes, "Well, it's a square, and a square is a quadratic." And he said, so you could use this to explain or break down a quadratic equation. And so we took a pen out, and we started doing this. Well, there's 2x squared. And well, there's 2y squared. And well, there we have an xy, and we have an xy, and we have an xy, and we have another xy, so we have 4xy. And then this can be simplified. Well, this was just patterns. Up until this point, all we've done was patterns. And Keegan started taking something he learned elsewhere and relating it with the patterns. Okay, can you tell me your thought? What was going through your mind when you started to see that?
Okay, so that in algebra, or at least what I have done on Khan Academy, is point slope form. So like 2x squared or 2 times x plus 2 or whatever. So I had worked, so I'm in 7th grade, and I did like most of Algebra 1 last year, and a little of Algebra 2, and so I'd done hundreds of repetitions of point slope form and regular standard quadratic form, and so to know that all point slope form was that specific activity, there was others that taught us different types of formulas and how they work, but that I had done so many hundreds of repetitions and challenges and gotten help from so many people to have it right there easily, and I could have just done that the whole time.
So
Satisfying.
Alejandro, that was cool because Alejandro today, we've been relating back to this. We were kind of doing some projects, and we've had some challenges in Scratch that we were facing, and that was the thing that you brought up, the coordinates. When we were talking about Muddy City, and that every house had its own coordinate. And that coordinate, I'm sorry, Elias, and that coordinate would be the idea of how you take algebra and you use point slope, which would be the difference, the rise and run between two houses to create an algebraic equation. And in this case, you got to see it in pictures, so you just kind of saw the code in your own way. Same as uncoding the cards.
Yeah.
When we did the math and the alphabet, he just saw it in the form of X's and Y's in a square. Pretty cool. Anything else you want to share about your experience? What was like the best thing you did, and what was the hardest thing you did?
Well, second best thing was probably the donuts.
I think they were green. We had donuts yesterday.
And I think the best part about it was finally, like, not finally, but because when I first started the camp, I thought it was going to be a regular app class where you taught us about, we did an introduction on names, what we liked, and then you taught us about App Inventor for one day, and we just did it for 4 days in a row. Not really anything different. So when I finally was able to understand that by doing all those extra exercises and learning how to do point slope form, even if the activities didn't directly correlate, it helped me understand and learn how to better program in App Inventor and Scratch, so that I was a lot more productive in the short time that we did actually code the app.
Here was the cool part that we experienced. For me, it was cool. The best part was, typically when you see these programs, kids create games, right?
Yep.
You create a game. You create Pong, you create Tank Battle, whatever. You create a game. The cool part was, because of all those activities and stuff, only 1 of 5 teams created a game. Everybody else created a product, a service, or a tool. And that was way beyond just creating a game. And that was for me,